I'm the Cognitive Impairment Project Director at the Anna Trust, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to our presentation this afternoon with Father Hans Zollner. Father Hans is the Director of Institute of Anthropology, Interdisciplinary Studies on Human Dignity at the Pontifical Gregorian University here in Rome. And he will speak to us this afternoon about the importance of safeguarding for all of our religious communities. First of all, I would like to welcome you to a moment of silence and a moment of prayer, where we pray for all affected in any way by the important issue of safeguarding. So we invite you into God's presence where you already are, and we welcome this time of prayer. Shelter, resting beneath your wings, O Lord, you incarnate Son of God, draw us ever deeper into your divine life. Pour out your Spirit on all who care for the vulnerable. Bless them with your wisdom, courage, and commitment to gospel compassion. Dispel the darkness that crushes the spirits and souls of all victims of abuse. Enfold them in your love, O Lord. May all wounds be healed by a drop of your precious blood, shed to set all people free. Turn the hearts of all perpetrators back to you. May they know your mercy and healing love as they surrender their lives to your divine will. Enlighten the minds of governments, church authorities, and policymakers. May they implement legislation that protects all people. May we, your people, speak truth to power when human rights are violated. May we be fearless voices for the voiceless, advocates for justice, and missionaries of your gospel of love. Amen. And so we welcome Father Hans to offer us his presentation and his thoughts today on how we may best support all of our sisters across the world. Thank you, Father Hans.
I am very grateful for the opportunity to share with you some reflections on safeguarding for senior female religious challenges and directions. I'm grateful for the introduction by Sister Siobhán. I'm grateful for all those who have made it possible to have this webinar, also behind the scenes and the translators, everybody who is involved, not least also the Hilton Foundation for funding this work and the Anna Trust. I would like to start with this image, a painting that shows the scene in the temple from Luke 2:21 to 38, a painting by Rembrandt. It's called Simeon and Anna in the Temple. And I chose this because when I was preparing the presentation, it was Christmas time and we read this gospel during the octave of Christmas, and we will read it soon again around the time of the 2nd February. When the parents of Jesus come into the temple, and Simeon and Anna meet them, see them, recognize them. And I think it is one beautiful scene that shows where elderly people have had a particular sensitivity and a particular mission to point out who this newborn child is, the Savior of the world. And it was them, Simeon and Anna, who spoke about that in the temple. I was preparing this presentation while I was in a convent of the Congregatio Jesu, the female congregation that has the same constitutions as the Society of Jesus. So the acronym is CJ, Congregatio Jesu. And I can say that my connection to this topic is not only because I have been invited to be on the board of the Anna Trust, but also because for almost 20 years now, I do my retreat, my personal exercises, spiritual exercises, after Christmas, over New Year, in an infirmary, in an old sister's house in the outskirts of Munich in Germany, my home country. They offer very graciously space for me to stay there and to pray, and I have contact with them mainly through celebrating the Eucharist with them and sharing my reflections on the gospel with them. I can say that I appreciate very much the warmth, the hospitality, and the union of prayer that I always really enjoy very much, alongside with the beautiful food that one of the sisters, who is a cook, provides for me. So the other thing I wanted to say, when I was invited on the Anna Trust and when I was preparing this presentation, I stumbled on the word, the name Anna or Hannah, because in the German version of the Bible of this passage, Luke 2, the name of Hannah is written with an H as the first letter. So it's Hannah and not Anna. While in English, obviously, it is Anna without the H. And it is also confusing. It was confusing for me because Anna in German is used exclusively for the name of the mother of Mary, Mother of God. So, but I find this a very a good coincidence that Anna, mother of Mary, and Hannah share the same name, surely in Hebrew. And in both cases, it's elderly women, aging women, who have an important role in this history of salvation. And they have a unique, particular role in this that could not have been taken by somebody else, could not have been fulfilled by somebody else. So for me, this painting by Rembrandt, as you see, the figure of Anna, Hannah in the background with the hands raised like for surprise, awe, respect, and prayer, shows how much she is aware of what is going on and how she is impacted in this moment at the end, towards the end of her life, after having lived for decades alone, without children, and now being witness to the mercifulness of God, who shows his face, his kindness, his willingness to redeem humanity and to support the journey towards salvation and to bring it about by Jesus Christ, his Son. So may this be an inspiration for us in the presentation which I'm now going to share. Of course, I'm aware that I'm a religious man, and besides the experience that I have by witnessing the life, the community life, and some of the personal stories of the sisters in the CJ convent in the outskirts of Munich, as I said before, I don't have first-hand experience of living in houses, infirmaries for aging religious women. So, I mean, of course, all of you who are religious women would have would be in a much better position to talk firsthand about your experience. But perhaps there is also a reason why I have been asked to deliver this presentation, because an outside view may also be of help to see some things or to speak out some things that may not be easy to say if you are too close to the situation about which one speaks. So the goal of this 45 minutes which follow roughly, and then our conversation, is to move from a protection model that concentrates only on avoiding harm to one more positive and proactive, to one that honors the dignity and agency of aging sisters. Let me say here also, I've already used a number of words to describe who we talk about. Here it is written aging sisters. I've used the word seniors and other words. So please be aware that, I mean, I'm not a native speaker, as you hear, and the language that you use also in different languages, also for the translation, may differ and may convey some different sensitivities connected even with the use of different words when it comes to describe religious who are aging or seniors or elderly. So, I mean, all these words, at least in English, seem to be possible, but probably there are also some specific sensitivities around it. Please be aware that we try to use the words that are conveying the purpose of this presentation in interchangeable ways. The scope is sisters in assisted living, infirmaries, nursing homes, hospitals, and those in active ministry who are transitioning to retirement. So this is the group that is meant by the words that I explained just a second ago. And what I want to contribute to in this presentation is, as I said, to move away from only protection, avoiding harm, prevention of abuse, to safeguarding. Now, even in English, the word safeguarding is not as clear as it may seem. Even then and there, it has different meanings and probably also a different understanding according to different cultural contexts, societal and political contexts. However, the word has been introduced and is used also in different languages by now, even in Spanish or in Portuguese or in Italian, as the English word safeguarding. And the advantage, if you have a word that is not very clearly defined, as safeguarding is not very clearly defined, is that you can attribute different aspects, different facets of meaning to it. So what I would like to say from my definition that we use at our Institute of Anthropology for safeguarding, it includes the creation of safe space, the living out of safe relationships, and the implementation of safe practices and processes. Safe space is the physical space, but also the digital space. So the world of the internet. Safe relationships is all what has to do with relationships to other people in whatever circumstances, in whatever type of relationship. In some sense, it has also to do with my relationship to myself. Thirdly, the safe practices and processes is how do we put in practice our living together? How do we implement our rules, our norms, our constitutions as religious? How do we live out what we profess to do in our religious vows and in our community lives? So, as I said, this is a definition of safeguarding that has evolved over time. Probably not, that's not the end of it, but at least I would like to underline that safeguarding goes beyond, in my intention and in my understanding at least, it goes beyond the sheer avoidance of harm and hurt or any damage and wound. It implies the creation of a space of relationships and practices that make people flourish, that allows for growth and gives life. So we can discuss that, of course, at length, but at least this is my starting point for what I want to present here, which includes that we mention the right to safety according to a consistent ethic of life from womb to the tomb, which has been a constant reminder from all the ecclesiastical authorities, from the Holy Fathers through bishops' conferences to theology. Our Catholic understanding of the consistent ethic of life goes from the moment of conception to the moment of death. So that also means that safeguarding, as I defined it in my last slide, is an integral part of the gospel. It is not something added, or it shouldn't be, at least. It shouldn't be something that comes as an extra task, an additional burden, something that only experts can care for. No, safeguarding means that each one who believes in the gospel learns, knows, and acts according to what Jesus himself says when he calls the little ones, the outcast, the sick, the wounded ones, those who struggle with death, the paralyzed, the hemorrhaging woman, when he calls on them and when he ultimately identifies in Matthew 25 with all those who need special care and special attention. Matthew 25, 36 and following, when he says, I have been sick, I have been homeless, I have been nude, and you cared for me. It was me you cared for. In all what we do in our spiritual, educational, social, pastoral, whatever work and existence, it should include that reality that Jesus is the one we care for when we care for others and when we help them to flourish and to grow. It's not something added. It's in the core of the gospel. Now, let us come to the challenges. And of course, there are challenges which I present now that pertain more to one area of countries and continents, and others are more prominent in other areas of the world. There are challenges particular to different types of community life and religious congregations, orders, and other types of religious life. So there is intersection of aging and religious life, for example, in taking on the physical frailty, which brings about a dependence on lay staff or younger sisters for the care for the basic needs. The older we grow, the more that becomes an issue. The cognitive decline, the impact of dementia or Alzheimer's on the ability to report or recognize abuse, or even to voice one's own needs and inclinations. The isolation which many feel in the places we are talking about, infirmaries, aging people's homes, in special separate communities or community wings, isolation from former community members, family, friends from the outside. Other challenges are institutional and cultural barriers, like hierarchicalism. What does that mean? In religious life, at least for decades, there was a propensity to be submissive and a great reluctance to challenge authority figures, superiors, chaplains, or managers of institutions of care. So hierarchicalism in the sense of, I feel that I cannot voice any concern about myself or others because I'm not meant to criticize or to appear criticizing others. Many of us have been educated in a sense of you have to accept what the superior says because that is the word of God, and you shall not challenge it, you shall not criticize, you shall obey without any doubt or any question. This culture of silence that has been very often connected to hierarchicalism, but also to the image of religious congregations that they want to project outside, or the church as a whole, favored a legacy of washing linen at home to supposedly avoid scandal. So we don't talk about bad things outside because that sheds a bad light on us. And if you talk about bad things, you will be the first to bear the brunt of the scandal. And you will be ousted and you will be shamed. So I don't say that this is present everywhere, but surely a lot of this has been going on and and probably is still lingering in many places, in many countries, and in many contexts, which is precisely linked to misunderstood obedience, the risk of equating blind obedience with the suppression of boundaries. What the superior, what the medical doctor, what the nurse says, you have to accept, even if it goes against what you perceive personally as your boundaries. So that makes it difficult for people to speak out, even in a very educated and respectful way. Other challenges, more specific forms of abuse that we talk about, are the following. Spiritual abuse. Now, there is a huge body of discussion and publication over the last, let me say, 7-8 years that is interested in the definition and in avoiding spiritual abuse. Now, it has even come to the level of the Dicastery for Doctrine here at the Holy See in Rome, having established a working group a year ago on the canonical, on the legal definition for the church's purposes of spiritual abuse. We have not received any news about the work or the prospect of any type of clarification from a more objective perspective. which probably is difficult to reach. But anyway, for our conversation here, I would just define spiritual abuse for our working purpose as the manipulation of conscience or the misuse of sacred texts to control or shaming others. So all of us know probably of examples of spiritual abuse where a superior says, I am the voice of God for you, and therefore you have to do this. Otherwise, you are a bad religious, or you go to hell. There are many stories that we know about in this sense. And we probably, many of us also know people who have suffered enormously of this type of abuse, which is particularly painful for people who are religious because they want, with all their dedication, with all their commitment, to do whatever the vows ask them to do and what they have professed to do. And they want to comply surely in goodwill and good faith with the gospel and with the church's teachings, and also with the orders of superiors, confessors, spiritual directors, and so forth. The problem arises when there is an abusive attitude or an abusive structure that brings about spiritual abuse. We don't talk only about individual cases. We talk also about structures that don't allow for a real integrated spiritual growth, but one that is built on creating fear, creating dependency, and the establishment of, let me call it, spiritual dictatorship. This is, of course, a sort of spiritual abuse. In other areas, there is abuse that goes along with financial issues, like the mismanagement of patrimony or of retirement funds by the institute or external advisors. Or, let me add to that also the question of how retirement funds are created, and if at all, for elderly sisters. Physical abuse, pushing and shoving around, restraining, scratching, slapping, punching, bruising, misuse of medication, sedation, the inflexibility around care routines and structures. I'm not sure how many of you have seen that video that was circulating a few months back, where you see in a community setting in some African country where a younger sister, probably a caregiver, or even the superior, slaps an obviously elderly sister who is taking a video of that very forcefully in the face, not only once, in front of an employee. So this was a very powerful image of this physical abuse that we are talking about, that goes on even within communities, even among sisters. And neglect, often the most common and hardest to detect in aging communities, precisely because of the isolation and because of dementia and because of the lack of channels for communication from the side of those sisters. Let me come in a second to the directions that we can take. So directions that we can offer and that could be of help for you in support for your work, for your communities, for the positions in which you are and can influence your own congregations and communities to step up where it's needed and to avoid the pitfalls. So all this, of course, is very high language and very idealistic. of course, it's important to realize that we need to put in action and to work on those steps that can be taken. We don't need to get to magical solutions which aren't available anyway, but to learn what we can offer in the best possible way and with the next possible step. This is called the law of graduality. The law of graduality means I do the next possible step. I don't try to jump 3 steps ahead. So, developing a person-centered and a person-led policies, moving away from one-size-fits-all safeguarding. Now, one-size-fits-all could be a very practical thing if it worked. And to some extent, of course, we need to have common measures. We need to engage in common activities. We need to have some commonalities for our guidelines and so forth. But a person-led policy also recognizes that there are specific needs, especially when it comes to safeguarding, that need to attend to the situation of this particular person. We know that this is not always possible, but at least as a general ideal direction, we need to orient ourselves towards moving away from one size fits all to a more personalized way of care, in which sisters have a voice in their own care plans and in their living arrangements. Again, very often it will be difficult to implement this, but at least as some suggestion to think and to plan out what we are doing when we try to care for the elderly, is that they are asked, or also that they have the impression and the feeling that they are capable of voicing their own impressions about the care plans and the living arrangements. This is very important to realize that this is different from cultures to cultures, from context to context. I see that we are about 260 people now on this webinar, so I gather that there are many countries and many diverse economic, social conditions, housing conditions, provisions from insurance companies or other agencies that are involved, funding agencies. All this will be very different in countries where there are, for example, very strict and strong laws or norms from governments on how to care for the elderly. But there will be also countries where this is only paper that nobody attends to. So I'm very well aware from my own travel also that this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. And we need to recognize that in some parts of the world, some things may be easier and more easier accepted, and in other parts of the world that may be more of a big challenge. Directions when it comes to reporting some concerns, or let me say, also voicing the needs or the requirements that people would like to bring to the attention of the hierarchy. So it's important to talk about and to make steps towards providing access to lay-led safeguarding boards outside the immediate religious hierarchy, and to offer or to request supervision where available. Now, I'm very well aware that this may not be feasible in some places or very difficult in others. It may be required in still others where, for example, because of government regulations and norms, that is mandatory. But as I say, I'm very well aware that this is something that is not available or not thought about or not provided for in some places. I want to say something here that is connected to this, because I believe it's important to realize that religious life and what we talk about here in this webinar and what we do, and many of you do already for your aging sisters and for your congregations, is something that can lead the way for others, for other institutions, for other agencies. We can model how we care for the senior sisters. And one aspect where we can do something that perhaps for other in other parts of the world and in other parts of society is not yet even on the horizon, like providing access to lay-led safeguarding boards and supervision. Why is this important? So that the sisters who would report or others who would report are confident that the whistleblowing, as we would call it, is really received well, that the person who reports is protected, and that then independently from the religious hierarchy, the superiors, the councils, or whatever you have there, action is taken. So another aspect of this is the distinction between confidentiality and secrecy. Like it's of course it's not the same to reveal something under the seal of the confession and the duty to report administrative and physical or whatever spiritual abuse. There is a distinction, and unfortunately, I believe in many religions there is a hesitancy to talk about confidential things because they think it's under the seal, almost like under the confession. But it is not the same. And if there is a situation that needs to be addressed, of course, it is on my conscience, and it is up to my conscience to decide whether I reveal it to the appropriate body, to the appropriate person that is indicated, or I don't. This is up to my decision in conscience, and avoiding harm is one of the basic principles of any medical profession, of any psychological profession, and of, I would say, also of any religious profession. Now, another aspect is professionalizing infirmary care. So that means, on one hand, surely training lay staff, also bringing to them the knowledge of what it means for religious in their own self-understanding to be religious, and what they have been, how they have been educated, for example, in regard to their own body care, in regard to who can touch me, even if I'm sick. How do I experience as a religious who has been educated consciously, unconsciously, purposefully or not, that nobody else can touch my body when it comes to the genital parts, the intimate parts of my body that need attendance from lay people who are nurses or medical doctors. So this is one aspect of how to train lay staff. The other important area here is the boundary training. So how do we recognize if there is a grooming going on or boundary violations in relationships of confidence and in a ministerial or community context? Now, this is going on on both sides. The boundaries are on the side of the sister who is cared for, but also on the side of the staff or the younger sister who are the caregivers. Because sometimes, of course, elderly people, also elderly sisters, may go beyond the boundary of the giving person, consciously or unconsciously, willingly or by accident. But we need also to be aware that this is a two-side process that needs attention from both sides. Those who take care and those who give care. The other dimension that we need to address is the spiritual reparation and healing. Here is a very big unknown field, because we don't know how many from among those in aging communities have experienced some type of abuse. Let me say from my own experience, from the stories from survivors, inside religious life, inside female or also male communities, inside the church as a whole, in all probability, we have many more survivors amongst our members of communities than we believe and expect. I do believe that there is a huge amount of people, a big number of those in our communities who have suffered sexual, physical, psychological, emotional, financial, or spiritual abuse. And we need to be aware of that in the way we talk, in the way we behave, in the way we plan and put in action. Who are the people we care for, and what are the measures that we take when we establish our work for and with our community members, simply because there is, in all probability, a higher number of people than we expect who have gone through deeply hurting experiences. Not all of them have talked about it. Probably the majority have never mentioned it outside spiritual direction or confession. Probably many don't want to disclose to anybody, perhaps not even in confession. They have kept it for a lifetime to themselves, and we need to respect that. There is no let me say, usefulness in pressurizing people to disclose something they don't want to disclose. Of course, in the moment of disclosure, it is important to really care, to offer appropriate accompaniment for that. But what is mostly important here, my point is that we need to be aware that there are many hidden triggers that can elicit traumatic experiences, or the reliving of traumatic experiences, the so-called flashbacks, that we are not aware of and we will never be. So you can be as cautious as you wish, but just to be aware that something in your words, in a gesture, in some impatience you show, in some moment of touching physical or spiritual or psychological, very sensitive areas in this particular person, you may trigger experiences, and you will experience, let me say, behavior that you didn't expect. And some of this could be related to previous traumatic experiences. So therefore, it's important to create the safe space also in the terms of community meetings, where you can discuss aging, power issues, and vulnerability without the fear of judgment. So it is not only for the expert, it's not only for the superiors, it's not only for the caregivers, it's also for those, all of us who are living in community, that we are aware of the particular vulnerability that can be connected to the lives of particular individuals. Then action, education. So knowledge is the first line of defense. The contributions of these webinars, this one and the following ones, or many others that you have attended, is to boost knowledge, to introduce concepts, to open up spaces for discussion. This is not meant as the last word. Rather, it is the first word, and it should be a first line of defense, but there need to be many more words among yourselves, in your communities, in your whatever institutions you are, so that you can continue reflecting, discussing, praying, and deciding, so that agency is strengthened and senior sisters are helped to restore confidence in their agency, which they experience as very often as being taken away by the aging process as in itself, and by measures in institutional settings where they are, they experience it as being taken away, freedom and self-expression. Openness with the wider church and the public about what we do, how we try to provide care, what are the principles, what are our criteria, and what are our concrete actions. And accountability in-house. So in-house, it means inside those institutions and communities, and surely in the provinces, in the regions, in the congregations and orders at a general level, at an international level, but also externally. To whom are we accountable? Are we opening up our ways of proceeding so that people can call on us, can inquire, and we open ourselves to external scrutiny so that we get better, not because we need to or we are obliged to do that, but because we are aware that our way of dealing with all this is always imperfect and will be. But we are willing to listen to others who are experts, who can help us to be better, because this is, I believe, something that now in Ignatian spirituality we call magis. So growing to the better, the more effective, the more suitable, the more holy, but never perfect, and never wholly imperfection. Coming to more concrete steps now. So what could be done in the follow-up also of this webinar? Reviewing our current community constitutions through a safeguarding lens for seniors. Is there any word about it? What do we say? What needs to be amended? What needs to be tailored according to different cultural norms? Appointing a dedicated, trained safeguarding liaison for senior members, where available. I know that in many aging provinces, now you have dedicated and indicated point persons for the elderly. And these are the people who should get some training. They should have the enough space, time, and possibility to go around, also to visit the senior members, and look at the sources at local, national, and international funds for creation of possibilities to better our service, our care for the aging community members. So don't be shy to ask for that. It is not only for the active mission work, it is also for the the aging and the last stage of life, that we are entitled to look for funding. So what I would like to propose to you in the last slides is a duty of care checklist. By the way, you will receive in the aftermath of this session, all those who have registered, you will receive the PDF of my presentation here. So I'm aware that this is a lot of stuff, and therefore I would also make this available to you so that you can take it home and you can reflect on it, and you can take it also as a point of departure for community meetings, point of reference for your own communities and your own community meetings. So, culture of voice. Do we have a mechanism for senior sisters to report concerns, physical, financial, spiritual, to someone outside the local house leadership? You know very well that it is difficult for sisters in many places to bring up their own concerns with the house leadership because they are fearful, because they think they can't trust, or they are not sure where this is going to, or whether there is any follow-up on it. Then transition rituals. Does our community have a formal missioning to retirement ritual to prevent the sense of being discarded? I remember when 30 years ago in my province, the provincial, in a province that had very few senior members because of many of the Jesuits in my province died during the war, World War II. So we had very few elderly at that stage. When he started to see the need, the necessity to talk about the establishment of aging houses for aging members, there was a sense of who goes there is discarded, and there is no meaning to his life anymore. And it is a sort of punishment to go there. This was the sense. So it was very helpful to then start talking about rituals for how to prepare for such a transition, and what such a ritual and a formal mission into retirement could look like. Mental health awareness. Are local superiors trained to distinguish between grumpiness and clinical depression or cognitive decline? How do we do that? How do we recognize that, and how do we help superiors not to jump to conclusions where other explanations are more likely and to be to indicate the real need? Professional boundaries. Do lay staff and visiting clergy receive specific training on the power dynamics unique to senior religious women? And this is meant for how senior religious women very often were trained to obey, to be submissive to clergy, but it is also on the side of how do women religious deal with each other in their hierarchies, in the official hierarchies and in the, let me say, unofficial tiers of levels of power. Also the undeclared, undefined power that some religious have in communities, even if they don't have an official role anymore or never had. Environmental safety. Is the infirmary or retirement wing integrated into the community's life, or is it siloed geographically and socially? Are they shut off? Spiritual agencies. Are sisters given choices in their spiritual lives when it comes to choosing confessors, spiritual directors, reading materials, prayer styles as they age, or is it managed for them? Finally, I'll come back to this painting from Rembrandt with Simeon and Anna in the temple. And I would like to close with some quote or some inspiration that I would leave with you for your own reflection and for your own formulations, transformations of these words, at the example of Anna in the temple, who sees the Lord, who sees his parents, who then becomes the prophetess, which is hardly ever used the word in the Bible, and in the gospel only she is called like that. In the gospel only Hannah bears that name. So how can we acknowledge the life and the active life and the life in any type of retirement homes or aging infirmaries or whatever you have, so that our senior sisters are the living memory of our charism. And safeguarding them is not just a policy requirement. It is an act of communal justice and spiritual integrity, not only because of any, let me say, moral obligation, but because as I said, safeguarding is at the heart of our self-understanding as religious, as people who want to live out Jesus's commandment and Jesus' example of care for all those who need special attention and special care. So this is not something added. This is part and parcel of our gospel commitment. And with this, I would conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much indeed, Father Hans. So I'm most grateful to each one of you for your presence with us today. A very, very special thank you to Father Hans for all that he has shared, for his wisdom, his graciousness, and his prayer for each one of you, and for the work of the Anna Trust. And as shared earlier, all of the webinars are available to be reviewed on our YouTube page under webinars on the Anna Trust website, and you will receive the slides or notes as well, as Father Hans has so generously shared. I'd also want to say grazie mille to our translators. We are very grateful to each one of you. Without your assistance, we would not be able to share this work across the world, and we've certainly done that today. So many thanks. I'd like to thank Gianluca and Miriam Di Bartola, my friends here at the Anna Trust, very much for all of your assistance, your kindness, and your care. So until tomorrow, thank you all very much. Merci beaucoup. Agus Slán. Thank you. Thank you, Sean, Father.